The more and more I talk to women who've either experienced violence, are victims, know someone who's a victim, moving the needle even the slightest amount knows that I'm making some sort of a difference. And so we have to keep doing the work that we do because if we don't, it's not going to get any better for us. And I think we just need to keep re emphasizing how important it is to talk about these things in every facet of society because it happens in all walks of life, in all areas, across all cultures, across all communities.
Hey, it's Yulia, and this is Going Places, a show about fascinating places near and far, and the people who make them better. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your host, Yulia Denisyuk. Today, we're speaking with Megan Ryder-Burbidge, a global advocate for women's equality and the co-founder and CEO of Sororal, a feminist travel company and advocacy brand reshaping how women experience the world. 1 in 3 women worldwide has experienced physical or sexual violence, that's according to the UN. Chances are you have a woman like that in your life, whether you know it or not. Yet, this is a topic that rarely gets covered outside of specialized circles, so today we're going to fix that. Last week, on November 25th, the UN Women launched the global 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign, which runs until December 10th. At Going Places, we're happy to do our part in bringing awareness to this widespread issue and advocating for the elimination of all forms of violence against women and girls as we bring you this conversation with Megan today. In this episode, we cover Megan's work with Sororal and how she's raising a feminist daughter. You'll learn what this travel company is doing to address violence against women by partnering with anti-violence organizations in places like India, Morocco, and Kenya. We discuss performative advocacy in the travel space and whether women should worry about safety when traveling. We also ask what if women ruled the world and what being a woman is like in a society where even something as fundamental as our monthly cycle is not accommodated. Sororal has a number of trips coming up in early 2026, India in March for Holi celebrations and Morocco in May. For our listeners, Sororal has a treat. Use code GOINGPLACES, one word, all caps, when you book a trip to receive 250 Canadian dollars off your booking. That's about 175 US dollars. Follow their work at Sororal on Instagram and check out Megan's Substack, which we'll also link to in the show notes. And if you loved hearing from Going Places this year, please consider becoming our paid member. Going Places is an audience-supported platform, and we cannot do this work without the help of our members like Rise Travel Institute and Radostina Boseva, who decided to support us at the highest level as our founding members, and members like Ashley and Devon and Allison and Brian, who chip in a little bit every month as Going Places friends. You can become a Going Places member for as little as $6 a month. That's if you get an annual membership. And there are lots of perks associated with it, like opportunities for travel creators that we publish every week. We just shared an opportunity for travel photographers, for example, to work with National Geographic, and one to win a $50,000 grant for a woman-owned business. Visit goingplacesmedia.com to join us and support our work. All right, now on to our conversation with Megan. Dear Megan, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited that we finally found a place and time to connect with each other.
Yeah, super excited for this.
Awesome. Me too. And I have so many questions and things that I want to talk to you about. But first, I want to know how or what are the origins of the work that you do, the advocacy work for women. You are a global advocate for women's equality. You're a co-founder of Sororal, which we're going to talk about, the brand that's really also doing a lot of advocacy work and bringing women travelers across the world. And you're also a senior advisor in Canada's Public Service. So, where do the origins of this advocacy work lie for you?
Yeah, so I think Sororal or the genesis of Sororal sort of began as two threads in my life that kept intersecting. So first it comes from my experience as a bit of a third culture kid. So I had parents that lived and worked overseas. So I grew up moving between countries and spent a lot of time in my younger years sort of seeing and watching women move through the world. I of course noticed how culture and safety and gender and all of these things shaped their ability to end their lives. And so that was like a thing that always played in the back of my mind. It was an observation that's never left me, but I don't think it was until later in my life that I was able to fully comprehend all of those things. And the second thread just came later when I started traveling more as an adult, but independently of my parents or with my own child. And I realized how often women are missing from the center of the travel story, even though women are, as you know well, oftentimes the backbone of the travel industry. And I think saw that in the sheer numbers during the pandemic when women were out of work, their economic security was at a major risk. And I wanted to find a way that would mix the two. Uh, and so the origin story was that I think sororal was always in me. It just happened to come at a later life that I've found a way to put these two things together. I think it also slightly connects a little bit to the work that I do today in the Defense Department. So I do work for the Department of National Defense in Canada, although I'm here today speaking to you as the CEO and co-founder of Sororal, not as a public servant. And I sit in an environment or within an apparatus that often talks about risk and national security and safety and what that looks like to your own well-being, but also to your nation. And that I wanted to find a way to talk about that with women and what that also means for or in the context of safe travel for women because I don't think that that's talked about enough. I sat in on a panel this week for regenerative travel on conscious consumers and how new conscious consumers are traveling. And one of the key questions that was asked in this panel was, what is one thing within the travel industry that you would look to change? And there were a lot of wonderful answers, but mine was pretty simple. It was that safety seems to be a logistical step that people always talk about. It's a bit of a checkbox. Okay, we've done the risk mitigation. We know what happens when, there's an earthquake, there's political instability, there's something that happens, but it's not really weaved into the whole context of a tour. The nuances of safety aren't looked at from women, from people of color, for people who have passport privilege, for also disabilities, all sorts of things aren't taken into consideration. And so my wish or hope for the industry was that we'd look at safety a little bit differently than we currently do. So that was a very long-winded answer to your question about how Squirrel came to be. But it's sort of like all of these things that have got me to where I am today.
No, I love that because that's often how people who work on projects that are their passion projects, that's all often the answer, right? It's sort of a combination of your lived experiences and what you find that needs to be addressed in the world and where the intersection of that lives for you. You mentioned safety, and so I'm just curious, what does that look like, let's say, on a sororal trip, though?
Yeah.
Safety not as a sort of check mark or a consideration, a part of the small consideration, but it's like weaving through it. So how does that look like on your trips?
It's woven throughout from the first interaction to when women get back. It's being mindful that everyone comes into the experience, both consumers and the partners that we work with different experiences. So we approach things in a very trauma-informed way. Everyone comes with their own background and reasoning for wanting to travel. And so that is always at or in the background of our minds when we're thinking about engagement with our clients, how we're setting up tours, what works best for them in terms of flow of a tour, how they want to land in a country. Are we bringing them in at night? Are they feeling uncomfortable about it? Should we be organizing with partners that are bringing them around during the daytime because maybe they feel uneasy coming in at a certain time? I think it's also too creating a safe space for comfortable conversations. We are a company that's very bold and feminist in our approach and how we do things, but it's not, I would say, preachy. We don't want it to be come across as a lesson. We want any of the conversations to be mindful, meaningful, memorable. We want women to feel secure and comfortable and at ease in the environment, but we still want there to be joy in the travel experience as well. And so it's connecting with partners, seeing if people are the right fit for us and what works best for our travelers. There's multiple check-in points throughout a tour. There are check-in points afterwards. A lot of the trips that we do, there's an engagement with a local grassroots organization that's an anti-violence organization in the countries that we go to. And so after those conversations, it's how are you doing? Because one of the things that we've come to realize is that a lot of people actually have chosen to travel with Sororal because of our anti-violence component and the fact that they can give back. They have a story of their own or from someone that they know that often comes out when these safe spaces are created on our trips. And it's a really, really special thing to see.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, I think you say that on your side, and I've also felt that and lived that, that we all know someone who is a survivor or who has a story.
Absolutely.
It's such a widespread issue that doesn't get talked about enough. And we'll talk about it more. We'll dig into it in a second. But first, I really wanted to go back to some of those formative years of yours. So you mentioned that you grew up abroad, but where abroad? Tell us a bit more about that.
Egypt, Syria, northern Israel, a small town called Nahariya. It's like the border of Lebanon and Israel, parts of Palestine, Damascus, Germany, India. I've spent time in Jordan. So a lot of North African, Middle East focus, South Asia as well. So a lot of time spent outside of Canada.
How old were you when you were living in the region?
Yeah, so it was under the age of 10, and then in my later years from about 17 to 24.
Interesting.
Different very different phases, and it was always very interesting going back to countries that I lived in as a younger child, going back as a woman and the different experience that I had when returning.
And what was that like, the difference?
One, the country has changed so much. Two, the interactions with the community are different, both positive and negative for sure. And then I also just think you're experiencing a country and community at a different stage and phase of your life, right? So your takeaways from cultures, communities, food, being able to drive on your own versus being driven around by your parents or things like that. It's all different. And so or your takeaway from those experiences ends up being vastly different than the time before, I think.
So I must ask this question because you mentioned all the different places you lived, and it sounds like you've lived in a lot of Arab majority places, and then you lived in Israel, which occupies Palestine and which is currently conducing a genocide in Gaza and apartheid in the West Bank. So how was that experience for you living first in quite a few Arab majority speaking countries and then going to the north of Israel, which even that region where you were, even there, Israel is occupying Syrian Golan Heights, and there's a lot of very tense situations and checkpoints and things like that. So I'm just curious, how was that experience for you?
It's certainly been a long time since I lived there. I mean, when I was in Israel, I was at the youngest point of my life when I was living overseas. So, being as aware of the political situations between the two countries, or at least the surrounding nations, I was naive to it at the time. I think I have some of my best memories of my life living in Arab majority countries. My whole family will say that as well. And I will say honestly that I had never expected to be living back in Canada as an adult. I always thought that I would be living elsewhere. I mean, I certainly don't regret where I am in my life and my lovely family, but I always thought that I'd either be in like the Middle East or like North Africa somewhere because I felt such a strong connection to this community of people, this diaspora of people my whole life. So, of course, I think what's happening right now is you almost can't even put into words what is happening right now. So, I was in Jordan actually the few days following October 7th. That being in the region during that time, because there was an ATTA event that happened the weekend following. That was a very, very interesting time to be in Amman. I'm surprised the event still happened given where we are today. But yes, it's been a very eye-opening few years, that's for sure.
For many people around the world, and I hope more eyes continue to be opened. I mean, for me, it's been really frustrating 2 years as well because more eyes are open, people are becoming aware of again the apartheid, the genocide, but still it continues, and it seems like no no matter how much we protest and we advocate and we talk about it, it continues even today, even after the so-called ceasefire was announced. But I'm glad to hear that you had this special connection with some of these places because I feel that way too. Obviously, for me, the listeners of my podcast would know this. Jordan is a very special place
Yeah.
because of the people that live there and because of how I feel when I come back there. I feel like I'm at home and I feel like I'm at my most truest and most aligned self to myself
Yeah.
when I'm there.
Yeah.
So I really understand what it feels like for you as well. And I invite everyone to come and experience the region for themselves and really live, at least for a little bit, really live those realities. I'll never forget. Actually, this was recently. It was a couple months ago that I went back to the north of Jordan, to the small village called where you can see the checkpoints from the Israeli side, the checkpoints guarding the crossing between Jordan and Israel and occupied Syrian Golan Heights. And people just will tell you if you try to cross the river, it's shoot to kill orders is what they have there, and at the same time, it's so peaceful. The hills are so peaceful and the birds are chirping, and it's like living in this ominous reality that is also at the same time peaceful. It's very strange feeling, but I think it's so important that people come and see it for themselves because that's how you really are able to get a better picture of what's happening there.
No, I was just going to sing your praises, Yulia, and just, the work that you're doing of using your platform to shed a light on this and all the work that you do, because I think the more and more people are talking about it, hopefully some change will happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. We have to we have to have the hope. Continue. So you grew up in the region or in and out of, let's say, in the region, and then later you were also working. It sounds like you were working in a lot of exciting places too, Cairo, New Delhi, Hong Kong, Nairobi. Tell us more about that because I think working at a place is such a different experience, right, than coming there as a tourist or even living there as a child. So what was that time in your life like?
I was just having a conversation with someone about this last weekend, actually, about how can you really truly get the essence of a place if you're just going for a
Mm,
trip? And do you actually have to live there to really feel it? Because this is a very funny example, but I was saying, I don't know why, but I'm just craving being 25 again on a felucca going down the Nile
mm,
having a cigarette. And someone said that's a very interesting, like, picture in your head, and I think it was just I was very relaxed. I was living there. You were very immersed in, like, the culture and the community, and it didn't feel hurried or rushed. It was also, you were not forced into sort of mass tourism and being pushed into, like, experiencing the country very fast and extractive.
mhm.
So, yeah. All that to say, living and working in a country or visiting a country is, in fact, very different. My time in Nairobi was spent working for an organization called the Pearson Peacekeeping Center. We are working just outside of Karen and on courses specific to teaching police officers who are working in Sudan at the time, at Darfur, taking them out of Darfur, teaching them about gender based violence and how to deal with it in conflict zones, and then having them go back into those conflict zones and support women or men experiencing violence. So I was there for 6 months. It was a very wonderful experience. I've been to Kenya a few times since then, but that was a very eye opening experience for me, not only to meet the police officers that we worked with, but also just the learning and the value that they got out of it that they were then going to take back to their home countries, because they were there as part of an African Union mission, so they weren't all from a similar place, so they were going back to different nations. So in terms of Delhi and Hong Kong, so Delhi, it was at the High Commission, so doing work there. In Hong Kong, it was working in a business environment, so more so away from a defense sector or policing sector, and from a business point of view.
Which years were you in Hong Kong? I'm curious because it has changed so much over the last decade or so. I came once before the current government's, really takeover of the city, I would say, and then I came again after the umbrella revolution and all of the tightening of the spaces, and I just felt like it was a completely different city. And yeah, it's fascinating to see how a place can change so fast
So quickly.
under
Yeah.
security changes.
Yeah, yeah. I had never been before, so for me it was something completely new. My spouse is ethnically his family's ethnically from Hong Kong, so it was an interesting experience for me, and to also bring that back. He's never been before, and so yeah, just a very very enriching experience.
Well, now I understand more how your work with Sororal came to be because, I mean, it sounds like you have a very vast global experience and really this development and advocacy and security lens through which you view the world, it sounds like. So let's dig into that a little bit. I don't come across too many travel companies that take on the mission that you have taken on. I mean, sure, a lot of them do have sort of.
Yeah, but if you scratch the surface a little bit, Yulia, you'll realize.
Trust me, I know. I've had this experience very recently. Actually, Jordan was on. I shall not name the company, although it's easy to put two and two together if someone wants to do that. But I did go with a company recently to Jordan, and it was, their brand is very much built around community tourism and helping local communities and all of that. But the experience that we had on the ground was deeply disappointing to me.
Yeah.
And it's a big brand. It's one of the biggest travel companies in the world. Anyway, it's on your site, you report that 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced physical or sexual violence, and that's according to the UN. And really, when I read that, that sort of stopped me in my tracks because that is way larger number than I thought. Knowing that the number is so wide, how do you continue having the hope and the conviction that what you do matters in addressing that? Because this is a very selfish question, by the
Yeah,
way, because this is something that I often think about, right?
absolutely.
With Palestine, we just talked about it. And like, how do we continue our work and advocating and doing what we can with our sphere while also acknowledging that the scope of the problem is just so wide. So how do you think about that?
I try not to think about I redefine the way I look at the term impact or moving the needle. It can be very defeating. I think the more and more I talk to women who've either experienced violence, are victims, know someone who's a victim, we all have our own reasons also as well why we come into the work that we do. I won't go into my own reasoning behind it, but I think hearing the stories and the impacts from other women keep driving me forward with this work. I think moving the needle, even the slightest amount, knows that I'm making some sort of a difference. Even in the province of Ontario, where I'm based right now, violence against women is considered an epidemic here. And they're trying to push to have it in other provinces across the country. Violence against women is so bad. And so you read that statistic, but also keep in mind how much worse that statistic probably got during the pandemic when women were behind closed doors, couldn't leave their abusers, or the statistic is probably much higher when you think of those that don't even report instances of violence against women, right? And so we have to keep doing the work that we do because if we don't, it's not going to get any better for us. And I think we just need to keep re-emphasizing how important it is to talk about these things in every facet of society because it happens in all walks of life, in all areas, across all cultures, across all communities. So when we were looking at Sororal and how we wanted to approach this, it was very obvious for my co-founder Lindsay and I that we wanted to focus on anti-violence and violence against women because the unfortunate reality is that it impacts everyone, no matter where you come from. And that came out of a very real, impactful experience that we had in Costa Rica during one of our initial trips together, building a trip. The women that we were working with came out to us and told us this whole story, broke down, and we ended up leaving that trip and said, this is absolutely where we need to focus. And it made total sense because both Lindsay and I met each other volunteering at an anti violence organization. We've always been strong advocates for anti-violence and equality and shedding a light on this. And so it's just always been part of what we want to do and move forward. So my hope is that more travel companies start doing the right thing and focusing more on this and being authentic in how they're approaching safety and violence against women in the travel industry, but also just at a societal level too. I was listening to a Women Who Travel podcast, so very well-known podcast. I won't say who the guest was, but one of the things that the guest said is that women shouldn't be worried about safety. The world's safe. Just don't worry about it. Go travel, do your thing. And I just thought that that was not great messaging. In fact, I think the world is way less safe than now than it was, 6 years ago or 5 years ago when this podcast was put out, and I think we need to talk about it more. I don't think platforms like that should be, and this isn't to say anything bad about the podcast host or the guest. I just think the realities of safety and travel and what that means for women is something that we should be talking about a bit more. It's not just, yeah, sure, go here, go there. No, the world is not necessarily a safe place for everyone these days.
Especially the point that you made about the world being less safe now than it was 5, 6 years ago, at least in the US, this also comes, and I feel this almost like I feel it in the air. Like when you have a model of leadership which doesn't respect women, that flows all the way to the bottom.
Calls journalists piggy to their face. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And so I think it's a really important reminder to be aware of how we move through the world, inhabiting our different identities and how it impacts us. Because also, we didn't really talk about it a lot today, but traveling the world as a woman with a white skin is very different than a woman of color. And then it goes into all these degrees of separation from what the norm is in our world, which is a white man. So the farther you are removed from that, the less safe you are, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we haven't even touched on either is the definition of travel, and what does travel mean to someone who's traveling for work, traveling for vacation or those that are forced to travel because of other
Mhm.
things, of war, of famine, forced migration, all of these things. And so, does the essence of travel change? Of course, the meaning is very different for a lot of
Mhm.
people, and that's another thing to really consider and think about.
Well, I just love to know that you, as the founder of this company, are so aware and are thinking about all these things. I think that matters, and I think as consumers of travel, we can also think about how we vote with our dollars, who we want to go with. And so I'm just so glad to have gotten to know you and to got to know some of your values and how you think about these issues. I think that's super important. We don't have the space anymore to not think about these things, I think. I love that you are saying that we need to talk about this openly and frankly, because I think that's such a big part of the problem. I come from a culture that doesn't talk about bad things.
Mm,
All the bad things are swept under the rug, both
yeah.
in the family space, but also, on the societal space. I think actually now that I think about it, I don't think that violence against women is something that gets brought up often at all in many kind of situations and spaces, and it's like another silent epidemic, let's say, that doesn't get as much attention and discussion as it needs, I think, unless you're, like, in these specialized spaces of it, right?
Well, and that is why I think it's so important to be very mindful of this, at least for us, in how we're building our trips. Because if you create an environment that is full of joy, full of comfort, full of ease, the chances of women talking about these things is much higher, and it
Mm,
becomes a enriching experience for them in multiple ways. Not only are they engaging with local communities, they could be engaging with local women about talking about their own issues with violence, but it could also be very enriching for themselves post journey, right? In terms of being able to talk about these things or just coming to terms with maybe their own situation or their own experiences. And that's not to say that every single person that's come on our tours is a victim of violence. It's not a it's not this requirement, right? It's just that there is often a thread connector for those that have been on our trips, and that's why it speaks to them. I also think that it's a thread connector because we've found in some of our trips when we've come across other women on our tours and they find out about our anti violence focus, they themselves have come to us and told their own stories of violence, which is something that has been unexpected, but that has happened multiple times on trips. So, that again, if you think about impact, that is great,
yeah.
right? So, yeah.
It's about feeling seen and
Yeah,
feeling
absolutely.
acknowledged, which is the first step, I think, toward healing and
Yeah.
moving forward. You guys do some incredible things, said how a lot of companies have these mission statements, but you really put the what's that expression? Put the money where the mouth is? Is
Mouth
that
is
how you
yeah,
say it?
yeah.
Tell me about ways in which you support anti-violence organizations.
So a portion of our trip costs will always go back to a local organization. They are essentially grants to those organizations with no strings attached. And we say that because the organizations that we work with are already dealing with a lot. Quite frankly, they don't need to provide us with a report that says this, and this we did with your money when they are literally saving lives in the work that they do. And so if we get a some sort of an email or something that says, "Hey, we were able to do this with the funds that we received from Sororal this year." That's excellent. But we take again a very trauma informed approach to the donations that we make to these organizations. We let them lead us rather than the other way around. This isn't a white savior complex parachuting into a foreign destination saying, "Here's my money, take it." No, if you want to spend the money on food this month or fighting a legal bill or paying something for the safe houses, then that is your choice. We're here to support you. amplify the work that you're doing and share any resources that we can back and forth that will, one, help each other, but also provide some like education for both organizations. So that is how we approach it. It also depends on the tour, but in our Kenya tour, for instance, we partner with an organization called Usakimye, and their executive director, Najiri, she actually comes to speak with our guests. That has been an incredibly rewarding experience for them and something we truly, truly value. She's actually won a ton of awards recently for her work and the work that she does in Kenya for supporting women. So we're very honored to partner with her and be connected to her.
Amazing. So it sounds like not only people who travel with you can support these organizations on the ground, but also interact with some of the members of those organizations, which is amazing. And you also have this thing called the Voices Rising initiative.
Voices Rising Scholarship Fund. So this is a new fund that we launched last year. The goal would be to be able to support a woman who's been a victim of violence or an advocate who's been working for a very long time for ending violence against women to come on our one of our trips as a hosted guest. So this scholarship fund, it's money that goes directly back to a tour and allows the women to come on the trip free of charge.
That's incredible. And I think there's more information on your website too on how to apply. So I think we can say this is an invitation for anyone
Yes.
who thinks they might fit in that criteria to take a look. And we'll link to the Sororal's website in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
This may also be a good time to say that you have a number of trips coming up next year in 2026. I think I saw one to India for Holi, which is amazing,
Yes.
and another one to Morocco in May. And to say that our community members and anyone who's listening to this podcast can get about 175 US dollars off their trip using the code going places one word when you book with Megan and with Sororal. So definitely check out what the company is doing, what are the trips that they have, and how you can be part of this movement and this initiative to really raise awareness worldwide about women's safety, women's solidarity, women's well-being and thriving. Because I don't remember who was it who said that phrase. Maybe it was Michelle Obama. That what was it that if you need to heal a community, you need to heal the women or something like that. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
because we're the backbone, like you said at the beginning.
Hell yeah, we are.
Well, let's talk about that actually a bit more because there's a lot that I wanted to discuss. It's actually a topic that is often in my head because I often think that a lot of the problems that our world is dealing with and has been dealing with for a long time now stem from a very extremely simple fact that we don't have enough women at the power seats making decisions, leading, because I just believe that and it's not that I believe it, I feel it and I've experienced that women lead so differently than men
We
do.
do, yeah.
And we don't have this sort of conquering
Mentality.
and drive, like we need to conquer, we need to subdue, right? We want to collaborate, we want to communicate, we want to accommodate, which comes with its own set of challenges. But I just think that the way women approach life, and I know, of course, I'm having a huge generalization right now, but I do feel like we just need more women at the power, at the seat of power, and then a lot of the issues in the world would be solved by that one simple fact.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we choose to work exclusively with women-owned businesses. We want to be able to support women in any way that we can, not only through support to grassroots organizations from a safety, anti-violence perspective, but also supporting their economic security, their livelihoods. As I mentioned, we know women in the tourism industry, especially post or during the pandemic and post-pandemic, were primarily hardest hit. And so for them to bounce back from that, it's going to take way longer than it would for their male counterparts. And so for us, it was a bit of a no brainer. If you have a feminist travel organization, you're going to work with women. Women, as you say, are the backbone of the community, and their communities thrive when they are put in charge. And so for us, it's very much a part of our foundation of our business to support women in every way that we can. And we're also an organization, and perhaps this is a bit of a non-traditional way of doing things in the travel industry, but we don't like gatekeep who we work with because we want people to go use them
I love
afterwards.
that.
And so we're happy to say our guide is this person, our DMC that we use is this person, we stay at this hotel, it's women run. And, from a business perspective, maybe it's not the best because it means that someone else could take our idea and do whatever. That's fine. As long as that other women-owned business is getting business, then so be it.
See, even that, what you just said, it's such a non-competitive, sort of male perspective to look at it, right?
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much. Even when you think about it, how wide and how far reaching this fact is that there's just not enough women leading, period, in government and business,
Yeah.
across organizations, across community. And I think you also quote another statistic, another quite depressing statistic on your side, that it would take 140 years
Years.
for women to be represented equally in positions of power in the workplace. I mean, like worldwide, right? I mean, it just shows you how far we have to go. I will never forget this post I saw at the beginning of Russia's invasion into Ukraine from a woman that I follow who lives in Ukraine. And she posted something that just really stayed with me through already these how many 3, 4 years that it's been happening. She said, if men only knew what it takes to bring a child into this world,
Mm,
they would think twice about starting any war. And that just really, really stayed with me because, and I mean, I'm not a mother yet,
yeah.
hopefully, but
Yeah.
I mean, what do you feel when you hear that?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a mom, and I became a mom during the pandemic, which was a very interesting time to become a mother. Um, and it is absolutely challenging to do all of the things while also being a mom. And I think that women offer so much to society, and we are the ones that keep civilizations going. If there were no women to make children, there would be no more people. And so it's very simple. And as you say, men would not be creating wars. So yeah, it's a very great quote. I'm not surprised it stuck with you.
Also saw something that resonated with me that you wrote actually on your Substack, and we'll link to that as well so
Okay.
our listeners can check it out. But in one of your posts on Substack, you said, evolution didn't design us for this, the modern world. We have phases, literal hormonal phases that impact our energy, clarity, and capacity,
Yeah.
but the world doesn't make space for that. And I like with every fiber of my being, I really resonated with that because I feel it so much more now that I've turned 40.
Yeah.
But now I'm 42. So the past 2 years, I've been really feeling that. I think when I was younger, I don't know if it was masked or what, but I really feel these changes, these hormonal shifts in
Yeah.
energy throughout the month, and how some days I wake up and my brain is just like completely mushed.
Yeah. Or you can do more work, or you're more energized to do more work. You want to be more engaged with people. I've heard women who've booked their monthly schedules around whatever phase they feel better in because they get more accomplished during that time. And it has been through conversations with a girlfriend of mine where we've been talking more and more about this because every time I'd see her, I'd be so tired. We'd be talking about hormonal changes, and then just discussing that literally the world is not set up for to deal with women and our cycles and what we go through every month, and that we are the ones who are now more attuned to it and making the adjustments as opposed to it being the other way around, right? And so again, that's us making concessions to fit into
The man's world.
exactly. Exactly. I actually just published something on our travel notes about travel and anxiety and how that feels becoming a mom. So if you I just hit publish on it earlier today. So I encourage you to go take a peek at that too, because it's something in me that has also changed as a traveler since becoming a mom. The desire of wanting to bring her, but also feeling bad for leaving at the same time, which is something I don't think a lot of moms also talk about when they travel as well. It's very important for women to take their or moms to take trips away. I think it's very important, but at the same time, there's like this crippling effect that also comes with it too.
We will link to that one in the show notes as well. This is something that I think about a lot these days is that this attunement to our cycles that we are talking about is actually so in line with the way indigenous and ancestral ways of living and knowing are, because people used to be more in tune to cycles, period, right? Like the moon, the cycle of the moon, the new moon, the full moon, the cycles of nature, all of that, right? And women's cycle is part of that.
Yeah.
And so when you are already more have more awareness and are used to paying attention to cycles in your life, I think then you are more open to paying attention to the cycles of women as well. But in our modern world, capitalistic, imperialistic, very harsh reality, it's just not the way we live. Period. And so, one more reason why we need more women at the forefront, because we understand this, right? And we are aware of this, which is just so fascinating. I think that this idea of having more women at the forefront and, um, well, for me at least, dismantling the system. I'll be honest, I've become quite radicalized in the last several years. And radical is another very loaded word. And maybe I shouldn't say it to a security.
No, 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 no. No, no, no. I think that word has been yeah, anyway.
Co-opted, yeah, but what I
Yeah.
mean by that when I say radicalized is that I really question how we live, why we live the way we do, why we live in these systems that are really not set up for forget women flourishing, people flourishing.
Anyone. Yeah. Except for a certain percentage of yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And it can be a rabbit hole that I myself need to be very careful not to go down too far down, because I have a tendency to just get so overwhelmed by the cruelty of it, by the seeming inability to fix it. But I just keep coming back to this conversation of what do we do to stay present in what we can do in the work that we do, stay present with the challenge, but also find ways to move forward with hope and with joy and with conviction. So I'm curious, what is that thing for you, even knowing like all the things that we just discussed, and how demanding it is to be a woman in the modern world. So how do you navigate that?
So I think I just take it day by day. I make small little commitments to myself on what I'm going to do, what messaging I'm going to spread, who I'm going to amplify, advancing the perspectives of women and girls as much as I can in whatever capacity I can do that in. I work as you mentioned and as I've mentioned in the defense apparatus. And so I put my name forward to be part of the Defense Women's Association, and I'm the civilian co-chair of that now for my area because I thought, well, I'm going to make a difference here because it's all a bunch of men. So I think it's just like these little micro things that you need to do to hopefully have a more long-term impact. I'm also very fortunate, but it's also scary at the same time that I have a little 5-year-old daughter that looks up to me all the time, right? So I have to instill in her how she can be pro women, pro herself, give back, fight back, do all of these little things to make her the best little feminist she can be, because the gals who come after her will appreciate that. And I think that trying to do that as much as I can makes me not so depressed about the world these days. Yeah.
I understand that, and it's interesting you say that, because I ask this question often to different people I come across, and invariably mothers give me that answer, because I think there's something again, I'm not a mom, so I don't know yet, but I think there is something about having a child like, you have to be an optimist in some way,
Right?
a big optimist to have to bring a child into this world. And then on the other hand, you maybe don't even have time to go down some of these rabbit holes because, you have a 5-year-old in front of you that needs taking caring.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, she's great. I will bring her to marches that I go to, and she's out there, she's yelling, she's singing the chants. She's all for it. And I think it's just even as a 5-year-old, explaining situations to kids is really important. Making them aware of their surroundings, the things that are going on in the world, but explaining it to them at a level that a 5-year-old can understand. I think where we see problems is kids grow up and they have no idea or no concept of what's happening in the world,
Mhm.
no idea what a different culture is or a different language or religion or things like that. And maybe that's just the nature of my own upbringing. I want her to have some sort of experience that I did. So I feel it's important to share that with her. But we're also a mixed race family too. So it's very important that we talk about these things open and honestly.
I love that. And I was just gonna say, I think it's the fact that you yourself at a very young age were exposed to so many different cultures and ways of living and people and communities is what's speaking in you now. And according to me, at least, this is one of the best ways to educate a human being is to expose them to all these different ways of living at a very young age. One of the most important things we can do is to take our children traveling with us and because then they do grow up more curious, more empathetic, more open human beings. Well, I want to close with some of the experiences that you guys have on your trips. You mentioned that you have a trip coming up to Morocco, you have a trip coming up to India, and there are several others that I saw on your website for next year. So definitely if you're listening and if you're interested in this concept and what Megan is doing with Sororal, definitely go and check it out. But I want to ask you, what are some of your favorite things that you've done on your trips or maybe favorite destinations that you're excited to take travelers to next year?
Yeah, so I mean, all of them are really great. I will always go back to the experience with Nigiri from Usakimye. I just think it's such a wonderful and important, eye-opening experience to meet with someone from a dedicated anti-violence organization, especially one like hers in Kenya that's doing such great work. She's also just such a light and also a woman who tells it like it is, doesn't tell it like it is where you can't ask questions. And so it's a really wonderful introduction to the country and creating an environment that's very positive. We also stay on that same tour at a lovely place called Embu River Camp, which is one of the first solar camps in the Masai Mara. And the majority of the staff is actually women, which is lovely. So Valerie, one of the owners, she's been always such a solid champion of sororals right from the start when she found out what we were looking to do. And so that's a wonderful experience. Just being in the Mara, being in a solar powered vehicle is also very interesting. And then just flipping over to India, our guides are always just so good. They're women that we really trust and love and that we know will create a really open and honest and fun travel experience, but will also tell you the nuances about a culture and a community that sometimes I think people are a little too shy to ask maybe on tours, but that they want to know about. So I think that is something that's really special. I think just being in India for International Women's Day, for Holi, which is a very fun experience. I'm sure you've participated in it before, and then just the service providers and the women that we work with in country giving us a tour of their own village, their own community, and learning from them is just wonderful.
And I should say that we I don't think we actually explicitly said that, but you work with women-led businesses. Your guys are all women on your trips. So just want to make sure that we're clear
Yeah,
on.
so women owned, women led, women managed. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And by the way, no, I've never been to India at Holi, believe it or not. I keep thinking that's how has it happened? That's because I love India actually. I think it's such a fascinating place. But I really loved getting to know more about you and getting to know about sororal work. I do want to say before we close that I can't stress it enough how important and different what you guys are doing with Sororal, because I think also in one of your other substacks you said the last thing I want for our advocacy is to be performative, because
Yeah.
the goal is not just to highlight women in tourism, it's to shift power, resources and opportunities in a way that's truly sustainable and fair. And I just cannot stress enough how important and how refreshing it is for me to see, because again, like I just see so much, there's so much lip service that gets paid in the travel industry to all these goals of supporting women, supporting communities. But at the end of the day, it's good old capitalism that just continues and good old systems that just continue and nothing really truly changes on the ground. So I just want to say that I'm glad to see that you guys are doing this work.
I appreciate that. It has almost been like a fad to the industry. Oh, let's do a women's tour or
Mhm.
support women. But if you, like I said, scratch the surface a little bit, you'll realize that not every travel or tour company is created equal in that sense. So yeah, thanks for having us and learning more about Sororal. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we invite everyone to check out your website, sororal
Travel.
dot travel, of course. Sororal dot travel. Just two last questions before we close. What gives you hope in
Mhm.
this moment in time, and which place are you going to next?
What gives me hope? Seeing an end to violence against women or talking about it more amongst our communities and making it a topic that we discuss openly at the dinner table and with our allies, men as well. Yeah,
Because we need them for
we
this
do.
to
We do.
stop, and for all of us to feel safer and more equal and flourishing in this world. We need men. I love that you brought this up actually, because I think that's one thing that often gets overlooked maybe a little bit, that we focus so much on creating safe spaces and women only spaces, which also have a role and have a place to be. But at the end of the day, we need the allies, we need the men to be the leaders as well, and to recognize this and to be in this with us as well. That's really important. And where are you going next?
I'm going somewhere domestically next, so not too far. So I'm just going to the east coast of Canada, which is where Sororal HQ is based. My sister is based, and my parents are based. So I'll see them just before the holidays, which will be nice to catch up.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Megan, thank you so much. It was wonderful to talk to you. And I look forward to staying in touch and also keeping up with the work that you guys are doing. I'm so happy that we connected originally and that I learned about Sororal and your work. And I'm a fan now. So thank you.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Julia. Appreciate it.
Going Places shares stories that help us imagine a better way to live, create, and travel. We are located on the traditional unceded Anishinaabe homelands. Our theme music is Altercations by Matt Nicholson at Big Score Audio. Our editor is Luciana Boss. We are an audience-supported platform. Become a member and get our awesome perks at goingplacesmedia.com. Our founding members are Rise Travel Institute, a nonprofit with a mission to create a more just and equitable world through travel education, and Radostina Boseva, a film photographer with an editorial flair based in San Francisco. Take care and safe travels.